Brexit. Say hello, England.
And put simply, if the border in Ireland cannot be mitigated, if it cannot be managed in the short term, well, then you put the question democratically in the hands of the people and allow them to actually remove the border. Bear in mind, Andrew, that people in the north of Ireland did not consent to Brexit. In fact, they voted to remain.
Brexit means English independence. Nobody ever talks about England as an entire country in relation to Brexit. They talk about Remainers or Leavers or the Tories or Labour, or they focus more on the Northern Ireland or Scotland or London or the North. So I'm going to try and link what you guys think of Brexit, what's likely to happen, and finally get round to why I think English independence is going to happen as a result of Brexit. Even if you don't agree with me, consider subscribing by the end of the video. So I've been talking about Northern Ireland's Brexit alternatives for some videos now, but in every video I upload, I get a response giving a different solution. For example, I started making a video titled "Soft Brexit is Pointless." Either you accept that Britain's economy needs immigration and an open border in Northern Ireland, and therefore remain in the EU so you can at least vote on the changes to EU law, or you leave without a deal and therefore fully control immigration and sovereignty but risk Britain's economic needs. In which the top comment suggests either the UK should go to either a no Brexit or a no deal Brexit. A no deal, as I explained, would probably create a hard border on the island of Ireland, and a no Brexit would likely obliterate UK politics as we know it. So the first more general video I made about the Irish border question had comments saying that reunifying Ireland would be the solution to Brexit. So then I went ahead and I made a video on Irish reunification. I raised issues like Irish reunification would be expensive for the Republic of Ireland, and while most of you disagree with me and agree that Irish reunification would help the UK deliver a Brexit that means leaving the customs union and single market.
I've been wondering what that special place in hell looks like for those who promoted Brexit without even a sketch of a plan how to carry it safely.
But then I thought, no, hang on a minute. Surely it's the EU's problem that the customs union and single market have these really strict rules. That's the reason why the UK can't be at least granted at least some access for the purposes of national security in Northern Ireland, even if it's just an open border just to keep peace and the UK doesn't remain in the single market and customs union. So surely this must be an EU problem. So I made a video about it, blaming the EU, and well, most of you think that Brexit is a UK-based problem because, well, it was the UK who voted for Brexit, therefore the UK has to sort it. So then I thought about ways of possibly solving Brexit, and one of those ways is checks away from the border. So there's talk about having checks in the Celtic Sea and the Irish Sea instead of the land border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And well, most of the comments on that video are from people disputing about where the border actually sits and who owns the border. You guys get really hung up on whether the border is in the land or the sea, whether it's an Irish border or a British border, but most of you are definitely in agreement that there shouldn't be a hard border on the island of Ireland, and nearly all of you are in disagreement about the sea border. Either way, messing with the border is not going to solve this issue. So then I looked at using technology as a way of solving the land border. Instead of having physical people checks at the border, let's just have some camera that can detect vehicles going by. And the top comment says that Northern Ireland should be in a customs union with Ireland. So from the top comments on my videos, I can conclude that most of you either want no Brexit or no deal, and anyone that wants a deal is essentially making a compromise with the other side. For example, if you want to remain, but accept that the country voted to leave, chances are you'll want a deal that means the UK staying in a customs union and single market. If you want to leave, but accept that ultimately Remainers want something else, then chances are you want to compromise in getting access to the single market and customs union, but still being able to make free trade deals outside the union, end European jurisdiction over the UK, and end free movement of people. The scale of how soft or hard a Brexit we eventually get all depends on what MPs believe. We know most of them voted to remain, and how much they'd be willing to compromise. But Ireland is the piggy in the middle in all of this. Remainers who are willing to compromise remaining completely, and leavers who are willing to compromise sovereignty are happy to remain in the customs union and single market to keep the unity of Northern Ireland within the UK. But leavers who want that sovereignty, and Scottish and Irish Remainers who seek a devolved constitution that takes into account their vote to remain, would not mind seeing the breakup of the United Kingdom, either through a separate customs union and single market, or through reunification with the Republic of Ireland. Now I know what you're thinking. Not everyone who voted to remain wants to be an independent country. To explain why I've simplified this, we have to go to our map and explain what people were thinking before the referendum. Before the referendum to leave the EU, nobody knew what their vote to remain would do. Scottish people had no idea England was going to vote to leave, and they had no idea that their vote to remain would be hijacked by an SNP independence campaign. Likewise, the Northern Irish didn't know that Unionists would jump on their vote. So after the result was announced and Sinn Féin and the SNP jumped on independence, this created two types of Remainers in those countries, those in favour of independence and those against. England and Wales voted to leave, so as time went on it created two types of Remainers, those who wanted to remain to keep the UK together, and those who wanted to remain because they felt disenfranchised with the government of the UK who wanted to leave. Even Labour, who were campaigning to leave. Those who wanted the UK to stay together in every country went two ways. Some of them compromised with the leavers into getting a deal that remained with most of the benefits of a customs union and single market. Some of them saw that this wouldn't be as good as the current deal we already have with the EU and wanted a second referendum with an option to remain so that the UK could remain. More recently, MPs didn't even try to put a motion in Parliament calling for a second referendum because they knew there wasn't a big enough majority for it in Parliament. This now means that despite those British Remainers who want the UK to stay together still existing, most Remainers now have either moved towards the compromise position, that means leaving but remaining in a customs union or single market, or they've moved towards the independence/disenfranchised position, because if they want to remain in the EU and they're part of a country that wants to leave the EU, then the only way to remain in the EU, in their view, is to leave that country. As for leavers, the picture is less geographical and more about their personal reasons for leaving and what they expected would happen as a result of their vote. Once again, before the vote, nobody knew that the country would vote to leave, with Scotland and Northern Ireland voting to remain. As time has progressed, I suspect some leavers have moved completely to remain, and some have realised the problems leaving the customs union and single market creates, and they want a deal where we remain within those institutions. While others want to leave both the customs union and single market, but still want a deal. And finally, there are some who aren't too fussed about a deal and would happily leave on WTO terms. So when Theresa May presented her deal that she negotiated with the EU, admittedly, there would have been some leavers who would agree with it. But most leavers didn't see any benefit from the deal, pushing Leave voters either towards a softer Brexit or remaining completely, or towards a harder Brexit. Of course, once Parliament rejected the deal, this left those who supported the deal in the middle with a headache of having to compromise with both of the two outer groups, splitting the Tory and Labour parties. But if leaving on WTO terms would create a hard border on the island of Ireland, as the EU says it would, and staying in a customs union and single market makes the purpose of leaving less valuable, then that left three options for leavers. Those who wanted to compromise with Remainers and remain in the customs union and single market, those who wanted a best of both worlds border solution, and those who didn't mind if the UK broke up as long as their wish to leave was enacted, therefore leaving with either a hard Brexit or leaving on WTO terms. This makes many believe that Brexit is therefore a case of English versus Irish nationalists. But this simply is not the case. There are Leave voters all over the United Kingdom and even in Northern Ireland.
Well, I hope enough people will come out and vote out, because we joined the common market, not the European market. And they've got to think about people here that don't have houses, don't have jobs. Some young people have never had a job. And sense tells you, you can only keep the amount of people that you have the funds to do it. You can't keep putting up taxes and charging the people for the government's mistakes. And the government has to understand it's the people's money. And I don't care what nationality anybody is, but we're a small island. So what would happen, just say it was a leaf floating in water, you can only put so much weight in it before it sinks. And we're sinking and nobody's caring.
But what does it mean for Brexit? Will we end up inside a customs union because it might be the only way the EU would allow to both deliver Brexit and keep the UK together? Well, the Irish backstop originally had the UK in a customs territory and having single market access. This was rejected in Parliament as part of the withdrawal agreement. The Malthouse Comprimise means that Theresa May will try and renegotiate the Irish backstop. She will try and get trusted trader schemes and number plate recognition technology to replace checked. I talked about those in my technology video, which I'm sure you can check out. If you're wondering what this has to do with the customs union, well, this is the renegotiation Theresa May is currently doing. And in a letter to Jeremy Corbyn, who wants May to negotiate a customs union, Theresa May has ruled out Jeremy Corbyn's customs union plan. If Theresa May's plan A can't be negotiated, the Malthouse Compromise offers a plan B. The plan B is a managed no deal. Under this plan, the Prime Minister would ask the EU to honour the agreed Brexit transition period, extended for 1 year, in return for the UK honouring its agreed financial contributions and its commitments on EU citizens' rights. This would give both sides time to prepare for a departure on WTO terms at the end of 2021, or to negotiate a different deal. The reason why that's important is that if the government chooses to implement the Malthouse Compromise and Plan A to renegotiate the backstop doesn't work, which from what the EU are saying seems highly likely, then Plan B or a no deal seems more possible.
Before there can be any positive discussions about the way forward, the government must remove clearly, once and for all, the prospect of the catastrophe of a no-deal Brexit from the EU and all the chaos that would come as a result of that.
Now, because Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party refused to talk to May until Parliament voted against a no deal, then it's likely they would hold a motion of no confidence in the event of a looming no deal. If another no confidence motion was passed by the opposition, there's every chance the Tories could be forced into either extending Article 50 and negotiating a customs union, or be forced out of government and a general election would occur. So in a general election scenario, the Labour Party would have to come up with a manifesto voted on by their party. Labour Party members want a second referendum with an option to remain, but many Labour voters back in 2016 voted to leave the EU. So the question would remain whether they would abandon Brexit completely or try to renegotiate a deal before deciding they can't and therefore holding a second referendum. They'd have to decide if they would win an election by campaigning to remain in the EU or by campaigning to leave it. So out of the two main parties are four potential positions on Brexit: a World Trade Organization Brexit, a hard Brexit deal which separates Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, soft Brexit which keeps Northern Ireland in the UK and possibly keeps the whole of the UK in a customs union and single market, and finally, simply remaining completely. There's an MP in both the Conservatives and Labour from each of those four positions, making it impossible to vote in an election and probably leading to a hung parliament the way the polls look right now. But let's stick to the here and now and look at what Labour's customs union offers as opposed to the EU's existing customs union and other customs unions. The existing EU customs union and single market offer with the UK means the UK can enjoy tariff-free trade and visa-free travel with the EU, but it has to follow EU customs rules, accept free movement of people, and it cannot get trade deals with the rest of the world without the agreement of the EU. Labour says it wants to be outside the single market after Brexit, but has tabled amendments calling on the government to seek full access to the internal market of the European Union. Labour suggests the issue of free movement would have to be negotiated in this scenario. It's hard to judge how feasible this would be as a negotiating position, but it seems to fall foul of the EU's red lines. Labour wants to leave the customs union but negotiate a new one on very similar terms. Back in February, Jeremy Corbyn said this would ensure that there are no tariffs with Europe and would depend on Britain being able to negotiate agreement of a new trade deals with nations outside the EU. So it seems unlikely that under Labour's plan, the EU would agree to the UK having no free movement of people and the ability to negotiate trade deals. But a unified customs union amongst the whole of the UK would solve the Northern Irish border issue. The only problem is, this version of Brexit means following EU customs rules, and therefore making this version of Brexit more pointless, because we would be following customs rules without a say, and therefore that would make the case for defaulting to remain in the EU anyway, or leaving on World Trade Organization no-deal term. It's difficult to see what Labour gains from this politically too. It's very similar to the permanent customs territory deal in the Irish backstop. In fact, every customs union, whether it be the Norway model or the Eurasian Customs Union, involves sharing rules and trade deals made up by a group of other countries, and it ruins the opportunity for independent trade deals and independent sovereignty. It makes me conclude that eventually the Labour Party will ask the UK whether it simply wanted to remain within the EU. In fact, there's every chance that we might not even be asked at all for an answer. But then it's just as likely that they won't win a large enough number of seats in a future election. But pulling it back to the start of this video and the title of this video, if most of you want either no Brexit or no deal or the reunification of Ireland, then should a deal not be agreed with the EU, then who knows what would happen. But I personally feel that despite leavers in Scotland and Wales and even Northern Ireland, the Brexit vote in 2016 was largely because we have no English devolved parliament. Therefore, it was as close as England could get to responding to a combination of things that were happening at the time, such as the Scottish referendum, austerity, and the government of the time. It therefore became a form of pseudo-English independence referendum, where the negatives of voting in favour of English independence were never really explored because it was a referendum on leaving the EU, and because any fear-mongering seemed like just an unrealistic way of getting England to vote for the establishment that they hated. There's no way of knowing if Northern Ireland and Scotland voted to remain because they wanted to leave the UK, or because they wanted to remain with and supported the UK establishment who campaigned for Remain. But I think that England wants to be a devolved independent country, in control of its own capital city. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what do you think? Join in the debate below and subscribe.